Ken wanted to emphasize quality over quantity. That's what he said. And of course, I thought he was talking about the preaching, and I said, I always emphasize quality. He said, I'm talking about the numbers. I said, okay. All right. And how many do we have tuning in now, Phil? We have 23. We have 23 joining us live. And of course, that probably represents more than 23 people. That's 23 homes. You don't know how many are there. So what a marvelous gift we have to be able to do this. And I was one time, 2 or 3 weeks ago, Becca and I were going through the pneumonia stage, bronchitis stage, and we missed on a Wednesday night. And we were able to tune in and be involved. And so I know firsthand that's a great thing. So that opportunity is wonderful, which means that in the future, Phil and I will always be here. That's what it means. And of course, I'll make sure, I'll call Brian and Carol, and I'll call Dave and Felina, and make sure. And, Jack, you got to come too. So, Jack and Carol. So, all right. Let's do the practical side of the lesson from the morning. Love lasts long. That's the definition of Bible love. Tonight, we're looking at it from the reverse. Long-lasting love. In other words, how do we do it? Now, there's not a lot that I can add that you don't already know. There are things that you have heard, things we've talked about before. We've all been in places where someone presents the survey of people who have been married 50 years or more, and what is it that they said? Well, I was going through some old notes this afternoon, and I found a number of years ago we did that here. And I found the Arvins wrote, "We have 8 reasons to stay together," and named their children. What they actually said on their card, it said, "We have 8 difficulties that keep us together." I thought that was pretty cool. So, and I have that in my files. So we could use those kinds of things. But what I wanted to do was to begin, I'm going to put it in 3 time stamps. I want to tell you what the pervading thought was, suggestion-wise, from the 1950s. Then you see, from the 1990s, how things changed. Then we're going to back up and go to the first century. All right? Here is what I found. As the article later says, the women are probably ready now to stop their subscriptions to this magazine because of what he just wrote, while the men are running off copies to post on the refrigerator door. That lets you know. This was in a textbook for home economics intended for high school girls in the 1950s. To tell you how to have a successful, long marriage. The men are going to go, and the women are going to go. Notice what it says. This is what it says, seriously. Have dinner ready. Plan ahead, even the night before, a delicious meal on time. This is a way of letting him know that you've been thinking about him and are concerned about his needs. Most men are hungry when they come home. The prospects of a good meal are part of the warm welcome needed. Oh, it just gets better from there. Prepare yourself. Take 15 minutes to rest so you will be refreshed when he arrives. Touch up your makeup. Put a ribbon in your hair and be fresh looking. He has just been with a lot of work-weary people. Be a little more interesting. His boring day may need a lift. Okay. Huh? Yeah. Preach it, brother. Preach it. Number 3, clear away the clutter. Make one last trip through the main part of the house just before your husband arrives, gathering up school books, toys, paper, etc. Then run a dust cloth over the tables. Your husband will feel he's reached a haven of rest and order. He'll give you a lift to. Prepare the children. Take a few minutes to wash the children's hands and faces if they are small. Comb their hair and, if necessary, change their clothes. They are little treasures, and he would like to see them playing the part. Minimize the noise. At the time of his arrival, eliminate all noise of the washer, the dryer, the dishwasher, the vacuum. Try to encourage the children to be quiet. Be happy to see him. Greet him with a warm smile and be glad to see him. This is not the 1950s. Here are some don'ts. Don't greet him with problems or complaints. Don't complain if he's late for dinner. Count this as minor compared with what he might have gone through the day. Make him comfortable. Oh, I love this one. Have him lean back in a comfortable chair, or suggest he lie down in the bedroom. Have a cool or warm drink ready for him. Arrange his pillow and offer to take off his shoes. Speak in a low, soft, soothing, and pleasant voice. Allow him to relax and unwind. I'm telling you, this book, I'm going to go buy this book. I don't know where it is, but I'm going to go buy it. Listen to him. You may have a dozen things to tell him, but the moment of his arrival is not the time. Let him talk first. Oh, yes. Make the evening his. Never complain if he does not take you out to dinner or to other places of entertainment. Instead, try to understand his world of strain and pressure and his need to be home and relax. The goal: try to make your home a place of peace and order where your husband can relax. Now, by show of hands, how many of you would like to live in the 1950s? How many would not? Yep, there we go. Okay, so those are suggestions for the 1950s. I went back again in my files and I found some things that had been said here in the 1990s, particularly 1997. And you have them there on your list of things that sound, when you read them, aren't they just a little bit different? Aren't they just a little bit different? When you hear the 1950s, what do you hear? You hear a lopsided statement. Now, admittedly, that statement represented well what the 50s apparently were like. I didn't live in them, but I've seen television shows that portray that probably that's the way it worked. And if you can write that stuff in a textbook, then that pretty well represented what the culture was like in the 1950s. Things have changed. And as much as we might joke, things have changed for the better. Because now we understand that a long-lasting marriage relationship is a couple's thing. It takes two. So notice the first one. Treat your spouse, your husband or your wife, as you would like to be treated if you were the husband or the wife. In other words, husbands, we should treat our wives the way we would want them to treat us if the roles were reversed and we were the wives and they were the husbands, and vice versa. That's a pretty interesting thing. That was a part of a survey that we did in 1997 on Main Street. Someone wrote that out. I thought that was an absolutely tremendous way of looking at it. Because we all think about put yourself in the other person's shoes. We talk about that a lot. But I don't think I've ever heard it worded that way. If you are the husband, treat your wife the way you would want to be treated if you were the wife. If you're the wife, treat your husband the way you would want to be treated if you were the husband. I think that's tremendous. Okay, number 2. Be the head of your house, but let your wife be the neck that turns the head, because in so doing, you get a broader view of things. Now that's pretty good. You know, the joke is, husband's the head of the wife, home, yes, but the wife turns the head. And that's true. But now notice how they used that. Isn't that the case that when God wants husbands to take the lead in their homes, the wife serves like the neck to broaden his view so that he can see more broadly what the possibilities are, the opportunities, the things that can and might be done. Give him a full view of what all the landscape is like. That's a brilliant statement. I really like what they said in that one, but it sounds a whole lot different than the way it was worded in the 1950s. And finally, make your home what it ought to be. Make your home a place where both of you are there. This home thing is a team effort. I don't think in the 1950s they were meaning to say and come across with a meaning like the wording was written. Because in fact, in the 1950s, the roles were such that that was the way it was. The men went off to work and the women stayed home. When things have changed, we have to be a little more open to the way things are, staying within the bounds of God's Word. I like what the 1990s had said right here in Richmond. But now let's go to the first century. Let's go to the first century in 1 Corinthians 13 and close out from the morning some practical things about long-lasting love. In a practical sense, what he says here about love, we can put it into a practical way in order to see it happen in our lives. So the first thing he says is, love suffers long. That's patience. Patience. I don't know of a better way to find patience. If you have young children in your home, if you say, guess what? I'm going to watch the children and you go do something on your own. Go. And that works for both of you. Wouldn't that be interesting? I think that's a great way to learn patience. I've been learning patience for a number of years, every Thursday. I've had Ezra since he was born. I've had Zoe since she was born. And on Thursdays, there are times that I learn great patience. Great patience. Now, admittedly, it's a whole lot easier for me to learn it there because I know they're going home. But it sure is a great way of doing it. I remember back in St. Louis, a fellow came to me. Aubrey and Austin were, I'm going to say they were probably 2. I'm going to say around 2, something like that. And a fellow came to me and said, I have tickets to the Stanley Cup playoffs, hockey, Blues hockey, on this particular night. And Becca said, I don't care, go. But you're taking Aubrey and Austin. So the fellow that went with me, he had one, I had one. Aubrey went to a hockey game, has no idea. She sure did. And it was great. I mean, there was blood all over the ice that night and everything. It was a great hockey game. And so it was fine, you know. How do you do patience? I'll tell you another way to learn patience. Decide to spend time with your spouse doing what he or she wants to do. Just, guys, go walk up and down that mall for a while. Just go ahead if your wife loves to shop like that. You'll learn some patience real fast. Or ladies, go with your husband to do what he does. I remember Becca used to come every now and then. This was many years ago. Things have changed. Many years ago, she went with me golfing one time. And Stephanie rode in the cart. Becca drove, Stephanie rode, and I played. And she was dying to get home eventually. Stephanie had a good time. But the point is, you can learn patience that way. How about be kind? If you want to have a long-lasting love relationship, practice kindness. Just simply do something nice that you know your spouse really likes. Whatever it is, doesn't matter what it is. But what that entails is know what he or she likes. And just do it. Just be kind. Just do it. It may shock them to death. So be ready to, revive them, do CPR or something after you do the kind act that you've never done before. But that's okay, because then they'll be fine. So practice kindness. Do something that they really enjoy doing. That's one suggestion on kindness. How about this? Practice selflessness. Selflessness. One way you can do that is to say, all right, we're going to have a date, and you're going to plan it this time. You're going to plan it. And the next time, you're going to plan it. And the other one doesn't get any control at all. It's selflessness. I'm going to do whatever you want to do. You just let me know, and we'll do it. Now, that kind of thing gives you an opportunity to say, okay, all right, I'm on your side. I want to do what you do. I want to be involved in your life. Selflessness. Yes, there have to be things that are unique to us. We all have our individual hobbies, our individual likes and dislikes. But there are things that we need to learn to do together. But sometimes I need to give up me. You ever thought about just give up a day? Just give up a day for your spouse and say, I'm going to spend the day with you. We'll do whatever you want to do. It's all up to you. It works. It'll help. Let's see. Verse 5. Does not behave rudely, does not seek its own, is not provoked, thinks no evil, controls self. Practice self-control. Practice being in control. Jack told me, and I've mentioned this before, about a fellow who wants to learn to control himself. And so every year he picks one thing that he just manages or takes out. Maybe this year I'm going to get rid of soft drinks. Not because all soft drinks are bad, but rather because I want to prove that I'm in charge. Or maybe it's I'm going to quit watching television. That ain't never going to be on my list, because the only way to get the ball game is watch TV. I'll listen to it on the radio, I guess. That'd be okay. But the point is, be in control. Just manage something. Another thing to do to practice being in control, schedule things. Well, that's my deal. Everybody that knows me knows that's my deal. I don't schedule things well. I'm a fly by the seat of your pants kind of guy. Amen. Yes, that's right. And that's exactly why I scheduled 2 gospel meetings at the same time. Because of that very idea. I scheduled one 5 years ago, and then in the current year I put it in the same time. So I just didn't have that calendar handy. I'm not like Jack. I don't have 14 people keeping up with me. I need to figure out how you do that. But the point is, when you are a scheduled person, it helps. And I'm going to let Brian teach me. Now, I ain't going to become as good at it as he is, or as bad as it is, however you want to call it. But I need to have him influence me in that way. He's the king of that. I guess all of you saw the papers he put on our office doors some time back. Yeah, he said his office dedicated to Martha Stewart. My office was dedicated to Sanford and Son. He was right. I can't deny it. He's totally right. However, I know where everything is in Sanford and Sons junkyard. There you go. So, there's no doubt about that. So, you know, the whole point is this, people. If we're going to have a long-lasting love, we have to practice it. We have to practice. Marriage doesn't just happen. Family doesn't just happen. Friendships don't just happen. They become what they are because we practice them. And in every one of those cases, it is love that will cause us to do it. I want you to think, and I know I skipped over the concept of joy because I'm using it right here. Think back to a time when you were having a real difficulty in your life. I mean, a real difficulty. And it was relational to somebody or with somebody or something. And when you finally fixed it, wasn't it because you loved those people? You really did. And that's what causes it to happen. So when you have those difficulties, because you love each other, when you practice that, that's what causes it to happen. And you know, all you got to do is spend some time with people who are going through difficulties, and you learn how to be a loving person that has the joy that this passage talks about. So when we understand the definition of love, that love is long-lasting, if it is not eternal, if it is not unfailing, if it is not always patient and kind, it is not biblical love. So number two, then, if that's what it is, then how am I going to make that happen? Well, I have to practice it, and I have to be intentional. It's not accidental. I decide this is how it's going to be. I decide this is what I'm going to do. I make a commitment to be this way. And because of that, then things work. Because love is the foundation on which everything is built, and the wall hanger upon which everything hangs. Long, lasting love. It's not possible for us to talk about love without talking about God. Long lasting, has loved us since before time, and has loved us so much that He gave so much. As is our custom, and properly so, before we leave this night, maybe there's someone here who has something on his or her mind that you need us to help you. Maybe there's somebody tuning in that wants to call us and tell us, hey, I need you to pray for this situation and be a part of my life in this way. That's what we do because we love each other and because God loves us. So if you need our help tonight, if there's something we need to do for you, just let us know and we'll do it. Let's stand and sing together.